Hello, I've been asked to do a video on finishing something using Catalized varnish, and that's what I'm going to do today. And I'm going to use this little guy as an example. And what this is, in case you're wondering, I call a couch potato tray. I've made many of these over the years for people who asked. And but this one's kind of special. It has a cup holder for a special cup that she likes to use constantly. So this one is rather unique. Now, you really can't mass produce these because the distance from the floor to the top of the couch cushion, because this will actually slide right underneath the couch and just over the top of the cushion, providing a platform for you to have your dinner or put your laptop, or just if you're reading a book, you can put your book there. It's just got many little uses. Problem is that the gap underneath the couch, in other words, the distance between the bottom of the couch and the couch leg, varies, and also the height of the top of the couch cushion from the floor varies. So you kind of have to measure the couch or get dimensions on what the couch they're using is to make the couch potato tray work properly. Anyway, I'm going to be finishing this with Catalized varnish, and I just wanted to run this by you so that you know what it is I'm finishing. Now, the reason I didn't make a video on making this is because it's so simple. I didn't want to insult anybody's intelligence. Basically, all it is two rectangles tied together with an upright, with a couple of uprights, and a groove cut into the top section so that a piece of veneer can be slid into the groove and act as the top. And that's all there is to this. And the other thing is that you want to secure it properly because, of course, you don't know how much weight it's going to be carrying. Somebody might put something really heavy on it, and you don't want it to break. So I've got it glued and I've got it screwed. So those two uprights are going to be very difficult to break. Anyway, the reason for all of the holes that you see, I use finished head screws, and I'm not a fan of putty. So what I do is I turn around and I finish it, and then I go over it with a matching crayon pencil, a special pencil that fills in the holes. You can't see them, and you don't end up with a little bleached ring around all of your putty holes that you would normally have with a conventional wood putty. And I can get a much better match with the crayon pencils than you can with the putty because, of course, they make maple and they make walnut, but they don't make light walnut and dark walnut and, light maple and darker maple for the areas in the maple that have a lot of mineral deposits in it, and that's a little darker, and walnut's too dark, so you know what I mean. So you'll see the finished product when I'm done, and you'll notice that you're not going to see any nail holes, any screw holes at all. But the finished head screws I really like because they don't make a massive hole, and they really do a good job. Anyway, okay, I'm going to get prepared to do the finishing. Okay, in front of you, you see the items that I'm going to be using to finish this little couch potato tray. And I've got a 1/4 cup measuring cup. I have the Catalized varnish, which is the semi-gloss. That's what I like to use. You can use whatever you want. And I've got the Catalyst, which is basically an acid that mixes together with the catalyst and starts the drying process. And you can see my cheap Central Pneumatic Harbor Freight spray gun in the background. Actually, that gun is really a good gun, and you'll see what it produces. But yeah, don't go out spending a fortune on a spray gun because you can get a really good, decent gun for $20 from Harbor Freight that will perform just as well as a really expensive gun. So anyway, these are the products, and I'll show you the mixing process. Okay, I've stirred the Catalized varnish, and basically all I do is I take the can, and I've got about a half a can, and I just rotate it like this. Don't shake it. You don't want to introduce air bubbles into the product. You'll have to wait until those all pop, and that can take some time. The other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you filter the material because you never know what's going to be in these cans. Okay, I've got my trusty cone filter. That's going to go in there. And the only other thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to determine how much catalyzed varnish you want to put in that gun, because once you mix it, basically you're going to throw it away, anything that you haven't used. So you'll get good at knowing how much material you're going to need for whatever project you're going to be finishing. In my case, I'm going to need about a quarter of this cup, of this quart. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but there is, you're not going to be able to see it, there is some fine little tiny bits of material at the bottom of that cone, so it did capture some imperfections. Anyway, I like to filter everything. And now, here's the tricky part. Determining how much catalyst you're going to need for this quarter of a cup of material. So if this was a full quart, I would need half of this. So because I've got a quarter, I just need a little bit at the bottom, and basically all you're going to do is use good judgment on what you think a quarter is. And so what I do is I'll just pour some in, and I'll say, yeah, that looks about right, and that's what I'm going to call a day. So, and that's the great thing about this material is unless you really overdo it, you're not going to cause yourself any grief. And that's all there is to it. Stir it up good. Now what I like to do is when I'm doing a full quart, I'll put the gun together and I'll lightly stir it, so that I don't start splashing all over the place inside the gun, because you've got an air port here. Material will come out, it'll start to dry in there, and it'll restrict the amount of material coming out of your gun. So you want to make sure that you don't plug that up. Anyway, I just stir it up thoroughly, making sure that I've got a nice stirred mix. And I'm ready to go. One thing I'll mention is this can only be sprayed. You can't brush this on, so keep that in mind. The other thing that I like to do is I've got 2 water traps in line before I get to this airline, and I exclusively use this hose and only this hose for finishing, which I don't do a lot of anyway, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, here I go. Whoop, let me dial this down. I forgot I had it set for a much heavier. The reason I'm giving this an extra shot is because it is a couch potato tray, and there's going to be a lot of liquids and everything else dumped on this thing. So I want to make sure that it's got a good coat of material on it. Now, nothing is going to hurt this. I don't care if you drop a soda on it or a beer or water or alcohol. You are not going to hurt this finish. And that is the primer coat. It's about 80 degrees out, 78 degrees out today, so this is going to take about 20 minutes, half an hour before I can go ahead and sand it and prep it for the top coat. So I'll show you that process when it starts. Okay, I'm ready to sand and steel wool this, preparing it for the top coat. There is no quick way to do this. It's time consuming. You want to make sure that you hit all the spots, especially around the cup holder where it's hard to get into. Steel wool will be a big advantage there. But I'll show you the process. It's pretty self-explanatory. All you're doing is lightly sanding everything to break down any burrs or rough areas so that your top coat will sit nice, flat, and smooth, and you'll be happy with the end result. If you had a nice flat piece, it goes a lot quicker and a lot easier. But in a situation like this, there's really no quick way to do it. You just kind of have to maneuver the piece around so you're the most comfortable. Now the radius parts, like this top edge, I usually leave those alone and just do those with steel wool so that I don't cut through the first coat, and so that's why I didn't do the edges. So now it's just a matter of steel wooling this and getting it really smooth and prepared for the top coat. Even though this is just a silly little tray, that when it's in use, all you're going to see is the top and the two front legs, because everything else is either under the couch or up against the couch. So, you know, it's one of those things where even though you're not going to see much of it, I like to make sure that I finish it like I would anything else. Me just being fussy about my work. I made this tray with nothing but scrap lumber that I had laying around, so it would have either become eventually firewood or thrown away, because you can only accumulate so much of this stuff before it gets ridiculous. In my case, I make a lot of things out of walnut, so I have a ton of it laying around, and it gets to the point to where you just don't want to keep any more little scraps because you've got so much of it. So in this case, I found a use for some of it, so that was good. When I steel wool, what I try and do is get a profile of the piece with some light in front of me so that I can see the shiny areas and knock those down so that there's no sheen, and that tells you that you've done a good job steel wooling the piece. Yeah, I do. Well, look at this. This will give you an idea how it works on the couch. I want to get this surface nice and smooth and nice and flat because I'm going to put an abundance of varnish on the top because, of course, you're going to get spills and everything else. But one of the great things about using Catalized varnish is I don't care if they drop water on this, they're not going to hurt the finish. You tried that with lacquer, you'd have a huge foggy area that will never go away. Okay, I think I got it. ready for a top coat. I gotta get all the dust and everything off of it. Ready to go. One of the other advantages of catalyzed varnish is the fact that you're using the sealer coat and the top coat being the same material. You don't have to worry about getting everything off of there using a tack cloth or anything else to prep your finish. You're actually turning anything that was a residue on there, with the exception of steel wool. You don't want steel wool pieces on there, but everything else will just turn back right into catalyzed varnish again, so that you don't have to take that additional prep step of taking a tack cloth and going over it. Now let me make sure the camera is catching this. Let's try right there. That ought to do it. Okay, now I opened my gun up a little bit because I want to get a nice amount of material on me here, and I don't want to go over it 6 times. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I turned the gun back down after I was done spraying the top. And I have some material left over in the gun, not very much, and I figured I might as well use it up. Put a little bit more on. Well, this thing is going to have quite the protective finish on it, because I have material left over in the gun, and I'm just going to throw it away. So there you go, the finishing process for catalyzed varnish. And that's all there is to it. In 10-15 minutes, you can use this. Now, the only thing that would deter you from using this in 10-15 minutes is the fumes that are going to come off it as the catalyst and the base material are going through its drying process. It gives off some pretty potent fumes for a little while, so yeah, it's good to leave it sit out and dry and get rid of a lot of the stink. What'll end up happening if you finish, let's say, a kitchen cabinet or something, and you finish the inside and you put the doors on and everything's dry and easily handled, no problem, you'll open that cabinet door the following day and you'll get hit with an acidic type of fume that'll knock you back. It'll like, wow, but because it's trapped in there and not allowed to air out is why. It's not harmful or anything. It's just really a pain in the neck. I think with what I've got left in the gun, I'm going to hit the top again, try and seal up that veneer, because of course the veneer is very, very thin piece of walnut on here. And if I can seal up the top, there, I like that. Okay. I have about, maybe 1 or 2 ounces left in the bottom of the gun. So that's not too bad. I was pretty good with the volume that I stuck in here to finish with. I just hate to throw it away. So I'll play around. And because this dries so fast, it's not easy to create a run. You really have to make a mistake to run this stuff. Okay, well, that's all I'm going to do to this. This is a really nice finish for something so simple. Well, I hope that helps you. I got asked to do this, and I was looking for something to build so that I could do a finish coat, and this worked out great. Okay, I'll even show the finish or the cleaning process of the gun. And basically, like I said, I have maybe an ounce and a half in here. And what I do is I have a bunch of wood in the dumpster, and I will pour this on the wood, and it'll harden on the wood and won't affect anything. So I'll be right back. Okay, I just dumped it in a pile of wood so that I don't have to worry about harming the environment. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some acetone, put it in here, slosh it around really well, pour that out. I have a bucket of sawdust that I put this in, and it solidifies the sawdust, and no harm, no foul. That's all it takes. It's about an ounce of acetone. And then you just swash that around a whole bunch, getting it clean, and you're good to go. And what I do is to run some material through the nozzle, I'll spray that into my bucket of sawdust, and that will allow me to clean out the nozzle of the gun. And then all I have left is about a little less than an ounce now in the bottom of the can. And what I like to do to make sure my gun is ready and clean for the next time, take a paper towel, in this case a Kleenex, and I run it around the inside edge where sometimes material will accumulate and harden and make my life miserable when I go to use the gun the next time. So I just run that around and make sure I get anything out of there. And you can see, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me see if I can get a close-up. See how clean the nozzle of that gun is? That's because the paint gun is doing its job. Nothing is oozing out any of the holes, and that's basically telling you that the gun is working properly. When you have droplets coming out of your gun after you're done using it, it needs to be thoroughly cleaned. And if you go through this process every time, this is all you'll ever have to do. You know, once in a while you'll break down your gun and really thoroughly clean it, but if you do this, you might have to do it once every 6 months, and that's only if you're using the gun quite often. Now, I wanted to show you this because this is pretty incredible. In the time lapse, in the time that it took me to clean the gun, which is less than 5 minutes, this material is dry. Let me show you. You can actually touch it, play with it. I'm going to let it sit for a few more minutes before I bring it in. But that'll give you an idea how fast this material dries. I love this stuff. I wish I had have learned about this many, many years sooner than I did, because I just think it's terrific. And I'm not touting anybody's particular product, because there's a few people making catalyzed varnish, and I haven't really run across a bad one yet, but the one I'm using I'm happy with, and until something changes I'm going to continue using it. Anyway, I hope that helps. I was asked to finish something to show the finishing process, and here it is, and I hope it helps. Thanks for watching this, and I'm sorry about my lack of expertise in doing these videos, but hey, you know, what can I say? And this is how the couch potato tray works. Simple as that. Now you got a workstation while you're watching TV and being a couch potato.